the country who, as this primary election kicks off, are increasingly wondering if this system, if this election is going to be fair, is it going to be transparent, is it actually going to work? I think this is just the latest failure. I think the others that we can point to is the recent decision the DNC made to change their rules to accommodate the billionaire who is Michael Bloomberg, to allow him to be on the debate stage, while there was never a reconsideration of the rules for any of the other candidates they decided to exclude off of that debate stage. I think the point here is that Democrats want to have the peace of mind that our primary system will be fair and transparent and will be representative of Democrats who are voting and those who are voting in this primary. And his failure of leadership is cause for us all to call for him to resign, to begin to reinstill that trust that voters need to have.
I gotta be honest, I don't know why every campaign, maybe save Buttigieg, is not screaming for Tom Perez's head. Not screaming at the height of their lungs that Tom Perez resign effective immediately. Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely right here. 1,000% correct. Tom Perez, immediately, right now, not 1 nanosecond beyond this moment. And you can make a strong case, should have done it a week ago, needs to absolutely and entirely resign. No, it won't necessarily add faith back into the process. No, it won't necessarily make people believe that the process is being fair, unbiased, and transparent. But at the very least, there will be consequences for either outright flagrant corruption or incomprehensible incompetence. Whichever one it is, and you already know the side I lean on. Look, I've said on more than one occasion, people tend to use incompetence as a dodge for just malfeasance. And there is no reason on God's green earth to believe, with all of the stories that came out, with all of the articles on how these guys are going to stop Sanders, with everything that you know that took place in 2016, with what you know took place in Iowa, where the Democratic Party right now is arguing that despite the results being wrong, despite the election not being called, that they're going to give Buttigieg 2 more delegates, despite losing by 6,000 votes, and despite the accuracy of the election being so screwed up that they can't choose a winner. They are arguing, quote, internal email, the attorney made the point, any re-examination of the precinct results cannot change the results on caucus math worksheets, even if they are wrong. The incorrect math on the caucus math worksheets must not be changed to ensure the integrity of the process. This is the organization that Tom Perez is ahead of, arguing openly that results that are wrong, that every newspaper admits are wrong, in some cases go so far as to say you can't even determine what the right results are because of how bad this election was run, that the Democratic Party, Iowa Democratic Party, but again, Tom Perez, the buck stops with him, is arguing that despite the results being wrong, that in order to ensure the integrity of the process, you can't change them to make them correct. This is the organization that Tom Perez is ahead of. This is what Tom Perez has wrought. Tom Perez needs to resign. And by the way, you can make a case that Tom Perez should resign just based on rational sense, meaning the entire point of an election is for it to be free, fair, honest, transparent, run with a certain degree of integrity, and that this was the opposite of that. But you can also make an argument that Tom Perez should resign because he has failed by his own standard, meaning the standard that Tom Perez set in the beginning of all of this. He's failed by his own yardstick. Let's talk about it. Tom Perez needs to resign. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. We like to say even $1 helps because they demonetize all of these videos. We are going to have contributor appreciation tomorrow during the election, meaning when the election results are being tallied. For the most part, we're going to be answering questions and everything else. That usually takes a couple of hours, maybe a little bit longer. So we'll be here for a while. Might as well just do all of that then. I think it'll be fun. But let's get back to the main topic. Tom Perez, his failure, breathtaking, out in the open failure. Because assume for the moment that this is not malfeasance. Meaning, assume for the moment that this is all just incompetence. Isn't that in and of itself enough of a reason to lose your job? This is the gentleman who wrote Shattered. Listen to this. You've seen this video before, but got a point.
The DNC is unpopular with its own base. Half of the Democratic Party, or roughly half the Democratic Party, felt like the DNC was unfairly tipping the scales in the last presidential election, trying to get Hillary Clinton nominated, trying to hurt Bernie Sanders. So you start with that bad blood. And really, there's just been a clash between these two sides that has resumed. The hostilities that had been put aside at the Democratic Convention in 2016 resumed the minute that Donald Trump was elected. This huge battle for the soul of the Democratic Party between the Clinton-type folks and the Sanders folks. And Tom Perez is in the middle of that, and he's gotten very explicit instructions from President Clinton, as we write in the paperback extension of the original book. He's gotten instructions from Bill Clinton not to let the party go to the Bernie Sanders folks.
Start with that context. Start with that context. This is the gentleman who wrote the book Shattered. Start with that context. Bill Clinton and his wife, who hates Sanders' guts, who would watch Sanders gurgle in his own blood while they sip a latte, gave him instructions: don't let Bernie folks take the party. Effectively, don't let these New Deal Democrats come back to fruition in the party. Keep them out, Tom. Now, the only reason you would have this conversation with Tom Perez, if Tom Perez was one of yours, meaning one of these third-way Democrats, you would never have this conversation with somebody who was not of your own ilk, that was not part of your team. And of course he knew he was part of his team. Tom Perez, when Bernie Sanders was running in 2016, advised Hillary Clinton to cast him, to smear him, to slander him as the quote-unquote white choice, the white candidate. If you notice, mainstream media during that time was running stories: Bernie Sanders only gets white support, despite the fact he's getting like Washington and some of the most racially diverse states. They're still repeating this trope, despite the fact that Sanders, of all the campaigns, has a majority of people of color. Meaning he has more people of color in his campaign than any other campaign, and they are still running with this trope that Tom Perez advised Hillary Clinton to use against him. He's the white candidate. Racist, brutally, viciously racist, and grossly immoral, considering that Tom Perez, the last name Perez, is somewhat of a Hispanic descent, and he is willing to weaponize race in these disgusting ways. Again, keep this for context. Let's go further. Tom Perez, during 2016 DNC leadership race. Now, if you remember, Keith Ellison was the person who was running in that race, because the point of it was we're going to unify the party. Now, Keith Ellison, for the most part, was the leader in that race. He was the one who was understood was probably going to win in that race. He has the highest name recognition, but also, for the most part, he was the guy that everybody looked to. All right, he most likely is going to win. Not so fast. Barack Obama, the same Barack Obama that said, if Bernie Sanders is going to run away with it, I'm going to throw my body in. I'm going to be Tanya Harding to his Nancy Kerrigan. That's a reference. You might not know what that reference is. Tanya Harding was trying to win the skating championship. And in order to win it, she had competition with Nancy Kerrigan, who at the time was the golden girl of the skating ring. Tanya Harding paid a guy to walk out there with a metal pipe, hit her in the kneecap. Effectively, Obama is going to run out there with a baton and hit Sanders in the knees in order to help whoever to try to get across the finish line if it looks like Sanders is running away with it. That same guy that hated Sanders so much and was willing to throw his body in the race so much chose Tom Perez. The same Tom Perez that Bill Clinton, who also hates Bernie Sanders, said don't let Sanders take the party. Based on Tom Perez's own standard, by the way. When asked, did they rig the race in 2016? Tom Perez originally said yes. Then he came back. I was misquoted. Listen to what Tom Perez says was the problem in 2016. When he's asked, what was the problem in 2016? Why were people believing that this race was rigged if the race was not in fact rigged? And again, Donna Brazile has come out saying as much. You even had WikiLeaks coming out and saying as much. But you know for yourself, you were there, rational human being looking at this. This stinks. Listen to what Tom Perez said the problem was in 2016 and how he was going to be the guy to remedy this particular problem.
Said that the primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders. Later the same day, you said you misspoke when you made those comments. Which is it?
Well, you know, here are the facts. Hillary Clinton won the Democratic primary. Hillary Clinton also won the popular vote. At the same time, because of the absence of transparency in the Democratic primary, there was a crisis of trust that ensued. And what we need in the chair of the Democratic Party is to make sure that in fact and in perception, every single day, you are fair and neutral.
Secretary, 10 seconds. Was it rigged or not?
Again, the process, because of the absence of transparency, it created that crisis of relevance. And
because in absence of transparency, there was a crisis of relevance, and a crisis of trust. There were all sorts of crises, according to Tom Perez. And in fact and perception, we need to ensure that this race is transparent. That is going to be my role as DNC chair. Tom Perez, straightforward answer. A word salad made almost 0 sense. It wasn't that people knew they were being cheated because they could read it on WikiLeaks and they could read it on Don Brazile's piece. No, it wasn't that. It was that there was an appearance of impropriety, an appearance of a lack of trust. So according to Tom Perez, he's trying to take this job because he's going to make sure that every day, in fact and in perception, that there will be transparency, fact and perception, meaning indeed, meaning an absolute objective reality, but also in the perception of events, it is going to seem fair and transparent. Before I even go further, has Tom Perez succeeded or failed in this? You tell me, has Tom Perez succeeded or failed in this? When he had the purging of the Sanders supporters, when he first took the position as DNC chair, was he succeeding or failing at this particular point? When Tom Perez decided to push through this thing of, look, I can't make any adjustments to the people who get into the debates. I can't change the rule for anybody. If I change the rule, that will be unfair to the other participants in the race. Bloomberg gives him $325,000. All right, the rules are going to change to allow Bloomberg in the race. Now, this is after excluding all of these other people that could have been in the race. Gabbard, Williamson, Booker, all of these people who wanted to be in the race on the debate stage, but could not be on the debate stage because of the rules that excluded them from being on the debate stage. And then all of a sudden, on a whim, Tom Perez changes the rules for Bloomberg. How on earth, to any measure, is this fair? Part of the reason that Gabbard said he should resign is because the process has been non-transparent and unfair. By his own rule, meaning the video that Mike Gravel released talking to the DNC, they say we can't change for one person. That goes against what we want to do, being fair and transparent. Well, you've just broken your own rule, Tom. That's not transparent. That's not fair in the least. And there are a lot of other candidates who want to be on that debate stage who are not on that debate stage because you kept them off that debate stage with the rules that you guys put in place. Rules that you blew away immediately when Bloomberg started putting money in your G-string. Understand, the thing with Bloomberg is not just the money that he gave the DNC, it's also the money that he can put into the various candidates up and down the race. Bloomberg has been, paying people $150 to say nice things about him, but he's also been buying endorsements. The charities that Bloomberg give money to, are those charities going to go against Bloomberg? Are they going to endorse Bloomberg? The candidates that know they can be funded by Bloomberg because he can fund their campaigns all on his own. Are those people jumping and supporting Bloomberg because of how awesome he is? Or are they doing it because the money that they know he can put in their pocket. Not to mention, if your name is Tom Perez, it looks like Bernie Sanders is running away with it. Your organization is absolutely broke and bankrupt, especially in the face of the Republican Party. What do? You have a guy who's the 9th richest man in the world. I believe it's the 8th or 9th, with $60 billion, some ungodly number like that, who is dropping $500 million already into this primary process, could spend $2 billion, wouldn't even know that the money is gone. And your name is Tom Perez, and you have a mission to stop Sanders. What do? And understand the only reason Bloomberg is in this race is specifically to stop Sanders. You don't believe me? Listen to Bloomberg's guy himself tell you.
The more, and I see this very much now happening already among my activist Democratic friends, the more people are getting scared about a Bernie Sanders candidacy for two reasons. First, because they think he'll lose. And second, they think if he wins, he'll implement the kinds of policies that I outlined a few minutes ago, which are so far away from the center of the Democratic Party. So there's a lot of activity around trying to, quote, stop Bernie, although it isn't called by that just yet. And that's and Mike Bloomberg could well play a role in that as an alternative to Bernie Sanders. But as you also point out, for that to happen, Biden has to, in effect, not do as well as people expect, whether it's second, third, or fourth. Biden has to weaken in the course of these first four early primaries. If Biden wins Iowa and then New Hampshire, let's say, and he's obviously strong in Nevada, strong in South Carolina, it may well be game over.
Well, thanks for the...
Now, what that means, he was very explicit. If Biden flames out, there's an anti-Sanders coalition, and Bloomberg could play a role in that. The only reason Bloomberg is in this race is to stop Sanders. That was understood very early on when it was made clear, if it looks like Sanders is going to take it, I'm going to get in the race. Why? To stop Sanders. He just said with that anti-Sanders coalition, we don't necessarily call it that yet. Well, some of them do. They were saying it on the pages of the New York Times with Buttigieg, Chuck Schumer, a bunch of other lobbyists were calling it, we need to stop Sanders. My point is, the only reason Bloomberg is in this race is to stop Sanders. He avoided the first few states in doing so to make sure, or to give Biden a chance to actually do well in the race. When it looks like Biden was fading out, Bloomberg got into the race to stop Sanders. The person who got into the race with the explicit aim of stopping Sanders was given a loophole by Tom Perez to get into the debates. I guess I'm making the point that one step after the next, Tom Perez has taken action to fulfill the obligations and his instructions when he first took this job. When Tom Perez decided to put all of these committee chairs with lobbyists and people who are outright vehemently against Sanders, going so far as to put John Podesta, the person who ran Hillary Clinton's campaign, on some of the campaign committees. This is extraordinary. And again, if you're looking at a process to be fair, transparent, non-biased, putting your opposition's campaign chair on the committees, probably not the best idea. Probably not the best idea. And let's go to Iowa now, because I wanted to set the context that all of this stuff was set in, and I wanted to give you Tom Perez's own perspective of events in regards to what it takes to be successful in the job of the DNC chair, especially for the 2020 election. Tom Perez, clear and transparent in fact and perception, because I want to avoid the crisis of trust that was there in 2016 when we vigorously cheated Sanders. You get into Iowa and an application where the DNC has a conversation with the Iowa Democratic Party. The Iowa Democratic Party in secret goes and get an application shadow. You find out that there are fiduciary relationships between Buttigieg, the person who's running in the race, and the person who's running the company. Not to mention, you find staffing relationships like communications directors and whatnot, people who are part of the company interacting or being married to people who are part of this Buttigieg's campaign. This stinks. You see these guys partying together. I guess my point is, if your name is Tom Perez, why didn't you know that they were using this device? Why did you think it was a good idea, if you did in fact know that they were going to use a device where one of the candidates who's running in the race has a fiduciary relationship, and the point of the app is to count votes? You knew that this election was going to take place in 2020. You knew there was heavy, heavy skepticism on the Democratic Party being able to have a fair contest with Sanders in the race. And yet and still, it gets to Iowa, everything on every level fails. And then the complaint becomes, well, we had to show both tallies, the first vote and the second vote, missing the fact that the first vote and the second vote supposedly have been recorded anyway. And if you're complaining about showing both tallies, it probably means that you were fucking up in 2016 also. You knew this election was coming up. You knew there was a heavy skepticism on the Democratic Party, and yet and still, you still end up with a situation like Iowa, with after a week, still don't know who wins the race. And keep in mind, again, the context. Pete Buttigieg, they're leaking out information to give this false impression that Pete Buttigieg is winning something that they already have the numbers to. Just so happened that the numbers were completely wrong. You had votes going to Tom Steyer, votes going to Deval Patrick, and even when these people say we're holding this for quality assurance, the numbers are absolutely correct. The numbers were entirely wrong. The numbers still are wrong. The buck stops with Tom Perez, right? He's the head of the DNC. He said he's going to be sure of fact and fiction, or fact and perception, there's going to be a fair telling of this. Tom Perez, after watching failure after failure for hours, them fucking it up, meaning everybody understood the numbers were wrong. They understood those numbers and precincts were wrong for hours. Tom Perez doesn't get involved in this process until it gets to 97% of the vote, and it looks like Bernie Sanders is about to swallow Pete Buttigieg whole. Only then, I've had enough. I'm going to get involved. Tom Perez, just for a series of events, got involved when the people of color, those communities in Iowa, they were part, or you can say the working class communities, they were part of the satellite caucuses. Overwhelmingly people of color. When those votes started to come in and he started to get caught up and was about to overtake Buttigieg, it was only then, at 97%, despite days of failures, that Tom Perez, after getting a call from Buttigieg, get involved in the process. Calling for recanvassing. Did Tom Perez not know that the results were fucked up for all of those days? Did Tom Perez not have an issue with the results being leaked out in the way that they were to give the false perception and give Pete a bump from a fake win? And why was it only when Buttigieg called Tom Perez, Tom, I need you to do your goddamn job, did Tom Perez throw his body on Twitter in what looked like defense of Buttigieg, calling for recanvassing? My very point is basic. Whether you want to say that they were cheating, whether you want to say they were trying to steal it from Sanders, or whether you want to say it is blistering, outright, magnificent incompetence, I would make the point that all of those things are qualifications for the head of the DNC to resign, especially when that head of the DNC makes an argument that his job is in fact and perception to ensure a transparent process. I can show you the video again. One step after the next, Tom Perez has presided over ensuring what Bill Clinton said remains true. Don't let Bernie folks take the party, whether that's the chair that he's putting, or the campaign committee people that he's putting in, whether that's changing the rules for Bloomberg, whether that's purging all of these Sanders people from the party back in 2017, I should say, or whether it's Iowa, or whether it's just the failure of Iowa. Whatever one of those items, all of those things makes this election process look dirty. All of those things, meaning if this election process does indeed look dirty, Tom Perez then failed in perception. And I would even go so far as to say he failed in fact, because this is a dirty election. Tom Perez needs to resign. I don't even know why this is a shocking perspective at this point. Call it a day, Tom. Baltazar. Unfortunately, she's not right because she doesn't go far enough. If Tom resigns, it forces another chair race, which will highly likely be rigged too. Baltazar, I don't doubt you, but let me go to the next one. The whole Democratic Party needs to be torn down. Baltazar, yes, the entire Democratic Party needs to be torn down. And the fact of the matter is, if they cheat Sanders, how could it not be? Do we honestly believe that those people are going to go back and vote for that candidate twice? Even if they steal it from him with superdelegates, do we honestly believe that those people are going to go back and vote for the Democratic Party twice? I have a hard time believing that they would. Even if somebody like Bloomberg takes the race, Bloomberg, for all intents and purposes, would have just bought the race. Meaning anybody other than Sanders has somewhat of a hard time for winning, even if they're not necessarily burning a bus. If you cheat those people, especially with knowledge of 2016, you will pay. You will pay. And when I say pay, I mean you will lose. I mean, the weird fucking reality where these guys are arguing incorrect math on a caucus math sheet must not be changed to ensure the integrity of the process. Tom Perez resign. Tom Perez resign. There should be consequences. That's all I mean. Even if they rig the DNC race again, it's less important to me than Tom Perez losing his seat over blistering, eye-watering incompetence, or just flagrant cheating. And I got to be honest, I'm amenable to both, and it probably is a little bit of both. I'll leave it here. Like, share, and subscribe.